watching or anything. I'm sure it's working. I'm sure it's working. I'm sure it's working just fine. And I'll push myself live on my stream. Hey, what's up, my stream? Happy Thursday. I know what day of the week it is. I always know what day of the week it is. Happy Thursday. Welcome to another Real Good Thursday. If you're on my streams, this probably looks...
That way, it's actually capable of winning.
What is happening? What was that? What noise is coming through here? All right, I don't know what that noise was. Hopefully everything's fine. It's a Real Good Thursday. Today we have a guest. It's going to be a really awesome discussion. Should be interesting. If you have any questions about employment law or AI and the law or AI in general, should be great. Everything seems to be working. So I'm going to bring the rest of the crew who's going to be here on stream today out from backstage. And if you don't know what Real Good AI is, we're a 501c3 nonprofit co-founded by Mark Markiplier and my wife, Dr. Mandy Meiskens, to save us from the AI that's being injected into every single aspect of our lives, and develop scientific research that will pave the way for a world where AI is interpretable, isn't just some mystery box. All the secrets will be brought to light, and we will be able to know how it works and to know who we should pay when we generate some AI image or whose text is being, whatever. That's the future. That's our future anyway. And let me see if I click the button, if it starts to work. So there's Mandy.
Hello.
And
sorry,
Amen.
The sound was me. I was trying to look at the stream and I forgot that you get all my audio. That's a whoops.
Whoops. Okay, well, it scared me, but I understand. And chat, if you want to see the faces of everyone who's going to be talking today, I should say you have to watch on the Real Good channels. You're welcome to watch on my channel, but it's going to be different streams. I know it's not usually like that. So
we're testing something out, chat. Be cool.
Yeah, you have to be cool, okay? But Dr. Mandy and Amen. They're both staff.
Dr. Amen.
Dr. Amen. Sorry. But the new face here today, and the person we're going to be interviewing, is Rachel Terp. Everybody say welcome to Rachel. Chad,
welcome,
behave.
Rachel.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Rachel got her law degree from Berkeley Law. She did an externship with the Honorable Susan Ilston of the United States District Court for the Northern District of California. I thought that was pretty cool, but that might not mean anything to you, Chad. While attending Berkeley, Rachel is also the director of the Berkeley Journal of Employment and Labor Law. Being on Law Journal is a pretty big deal for law students and as a resume item. But Rachel also currently, as a practicing lawyer, represents clients in pre-litigation negotiations, administrative agencies, and in front of state and federal courts, including you sat as second chair for a bench trial, which resulted in precedent-setting California appellate court ruling, which is very cool and not a thing that a lot of lawyers get to actually participate in necessarily. That means, well, I don't know what that means. You'll tell us what that means, but that's an impressive thing on a resume. A lot of lawyers wish that they had something like that under their belt, that they could have sat as second chair on something that was so cool. And you also serve on the California Employment Lawyers Association as a vice chair of the
Education Committee.
Yeah, Education Committee. All of this we will talk about and more, but thank you so much, Rachel, for being here. It's exciting to talk to you. It's exciting to put my law school knowledge to use for the first time in a while. Usually I'm just making jokes and not really talking much about legal stuff. So, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So obviously we're going to talk about AI, and I'm interested to talk about your practice and what you have done and are doing. But did you have a specific motivation that got you into law school, or was it like the family business, or how did you get here?
To my knowledge, I'm the first lawyer in my family. I think my grandfather grandfather started some night classes back in the day, but he never completed them. So I went to law school because I wanted to be a plaintiff's attorney. I wanted to represent people who otherwise might not have an opportunity to vindicate their rights in court due to, for example, their finances. And so I was interested in helping in doing generally speaking, doing impact litigation, whether that was on behalf of groups of consumers who might have small claims, but collectively have large claims against corporations, or employees, who may have little wage violations that add up to big sort of stolen wage savings for employers when aggregated. I did some work before I went to law school as an analyst for the voting section of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, and that was very educational for me. We were enforcing a provision of the Voting Rights Act that is no longer deemed constitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court, and so where we were basically sort of prophylactically reviewing voting changes in areas where historically people had been disenfranchised. And the Supreme Court found that the formula for coverage of those jurisdictions was unconstitutional, hadn't been updated by Congress. And so that was the work that I was doing, and it was very eye-opening and interesting. And then I went to law school, generally wanting to work on behalf of, I thought maybe on behalf of, as a government lawyer, doing the work, because there are government agencies who bring cases on behalf of consumers, and employees, voters, et cetera. Just the stage of life I was at, and my desire to stay in Northern California, when I left law school, I decided I wanted to be a plaintiff's attorney sort of in the private setting. I went to work for an Oakland-based law firm, Brian Schwartz Law, and was there for a long time. Until I started my own firm in 2020. Is that answering your question? But anyway, the point is, I always kind of wanted to do this sort of work, and I feel very lucky that following law school, I was able to pursue a path where I am, and almost exclusively, I have been representing employees. So those are the people who I represent, and sometimes it's individuals who are seeking to bring a sexual harassment case against their employer, a wrongful termination case after they blew the whistle on illegal practices against their employer. And sometimes it's, wage and hour class actions on behalf of people who are working off the clock for their employer and not getting paid their wages. So that's sort of a broad description of the types of cases that I have been doing in the past few years.
Yeah, well, I just think that's interesting. My law school experience was I wanted to go because I thought I wanted to do defense work. And I learned pretty quickly. In fact, I did not want to do that. That was not what I thought it was. But I also thought I wanted to work. I had all these ideas about what being a lawyer would be, but I didn't have any family or friends who were lawyers either. So I went in pretty blind. And I think it's interesting because I can't recall a law school friend who didn't have a family practice with an office waiting for them, or an uncle or someone who was a lawyer, and they were like, well, I want to do what he does because I've seen
it's nice. It's really nice to have mentors, and I've I've built them over time through people I met in law school, or or like along the way. But and you know, my parents had friends who were lawyers, but a lot of them maybe didn't. A lot of people have as you know, have a JD and they don't go on to practice law. They go on to do a lot of other interesting stuff because it's a good training, and it builds a lot of skills and a lot of confidence in just like figuring things out yourself. And so, but there wasn't really anyone in particular who was doing that kind of litigation that I knew, you know, growing up. But as I sort of went to college and had experience in the world, and of course, like eventually worked at the DOJ, I met a lot of lawyers, and but you know, they weren't family to, you know, help me out when I was studying for finals or giving me tips on going through all of that. But yeah, and I've been blessed to have many, you know, wonderful people that I've worked with over the years. But it can be, you know, the funny thing is that I think that the skill that helped me get through law school was actually that I was in undergrad. I did a lot of archival research. I was actually thinking about going into, you know, getting a PhD or something like that in history. And so my willingness to just like sift through a lot of stuff, you know, page by page, and really kind of like get to like pin down the fact, and then write it down in the timeline, and like make conclusions based on that. You know, like my ability to do boring, I guess what many people would consider boring, detail-oriented work, I think was actually what has been really helpful, you know, in becoming an attorney. Yeah. Like, you know, I've got people bring me large stacks of documents and I have to go through each one of them. And,
well, and
which probably brings us to, you know, AI. People, you know, it makes all these promises about things, but it, you know, in the end, yeah, it's as lawyers, we've got to be really diligent and, you know, pinpoint the facts. And know them for ourselves and feel confident in them for ourselves.
Yeah. No, I don't know if I'm sort of jealous that I missed it, but I'm fascinated about the intersection of AI and legal profession because, yeah, it's hundreds, it's thousands of pages of things. It's stuff where if you could just hand it to, in law school, there were plenty of times where if I could have just handed a big, you know, digital stack of papers to a thing and been like, tell me what parts of this matter, that'd be great. Yeah. But we'll get to that. So, and from what your experience pre-law school, it sounds like you were working with the government and you were doing voting rights, voting law sort of stuff. Did that lead in a way that I don't understand to you being interested in employment law, or what drew you to employment specifically?
Well, you know, many of the laws that, so they're voting laws are civil rights laws, and so are, you know, the federal law protecting employees is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. So we got the Voting Rights Act, we got the Civil Rights Act. These were acts that were transformative for helping create a more diverse voting population. I mean, the Voting Rights Act, I think the Brookings Institute, back when I was doing the work, came out with around when I was doing the work, came out with a study that was like listing effective things the federal government has done. So this is back in the aughts, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's a little old, but I'm assuming it still stands, a lot of them. Most effective things that that the U.S. government has done, ranked. Number one was rebuilding Europe after World War II. Like, Europe's pretty well developed place after, you know, being, some places being bombed to smithereens. So rebuilding Europe. They set out to do it, they did it. You know, through their aid, right?
Yeah.
And then the second one was the Voting Rights Act. And so in a lot of southern states and in particular localities, African American people were highly underrepresented as voters on the voting rolls because some states had, you know, BS like poll taxes or literacy requirements that were administered in highly unfair ways, and just, you know, sort of some would call it like a terrorist level of intimidation for African American people who want to exercise their right to vote. And this legislation was effective in dramatically increasing voter registration among African Americans who had been otherwise prevented by state and non-state violence from doing so. So that was an impactful law. And so was the Civil Rights Act, which sought to create fairer and less discriminatory circumstances for all people in many settings, including public accommodations, the employment setting, sports or, education. And so, education, but I was thinking when I said sports, Title IX, which is used generally for education equity, but it often comes up in sports, education and sports context.
Sure.
So yeah, there's sort of, it's part of the same sort of general effort to create a more equitable work living environment and nation. So
okay.
yeah, I mean, so like the general
sense.
purpose of those laws, stuck with me. And voting rights, there are a few places that do them, do that kind of work, and one of them is you can move to Washington D.C. to do it, but I wanted to stay in the Bay Area. And then there are a few organizations and very few private firms that do that kind of work. So it's really it's kind of a niche. But I was happy to do employment cases. A lot of times if someone loses their livelihood, it affects their sense of identity. Since work is so important to so many people, it can be a big part of people's identities. It can also just feel incredibly unfair. And if you lose your job because you spoke up and you said, I think that my manager is discriminating against my coworkers or against me, and then immediately you get fired, or you say, I need an accommodation for a disability that I developed at work, and suddenly you get fired, or you take job protected leave under CFRA or the FMLA, and you come back and you get fired suspiciously. You can lose a lot of income, and it can be hard to find another job. So the cases themselves for a private attorney can be, you can support yourself as a private attorney bringing those cases, because sometimes they're quite valuable.
Sure.
So those cases are all very good and noble causes, obviously. Have you ever had someone come to you with something that's just like ridiculous that you threw them out and said no?
Well, most of the people who come to me, I have to say no to, and it doesn't have to. It doesn't always. It's
How do you
trying
choose?
to think of a ridiculous example, but like a lot of times it just I would say that kind of like a white collar crime. A lot of our laws are under enforced,
Right.
and so there's plenty of potential cases out there, and then you just have to decide kind of what kind of practice you want to have in terms of like the size of your practice, the number of cases you take on, because there's always more pie, in a sense. Like you can always find more work and more cases, but I can only take a small fraction of the cases that come through my door.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's I don't know if it's fair to say a lot of your work, but a substantial amount of your work has been in class action suits, which for chat, class action is the kind of thing where a company has put a product out that has some defect they should have known about, and it injures a bunch of people, and so there's maybe 50 or 100 or thousands. It could be something you got a letter about in the mail where it's like, you could be a member of this class action, like things like that, where it's like it's a big group of people, but usually the litigation focuses on one or a handful of plaintiffs as demonstrative cases. So you have worked on class action suits. Is that inherent to like employment law work, or is that just because you happen to be at a firm that sort of specialized in that? Or
Oh yeah, it's not inherent. It has like it's sort of there's specialized knowledge involved. In on the federal level, it's governed by when you bring a case in federal court, class actions broadly or unrelated to the topic are governed by Federal Rule of Civil Procedure, Rule 30 or Rule 23. Sorry, Rule 23, and so there are requirements that you need to meet to bring a class action. And they can be in a number of types of, there can be cases brought under, the employment laws, but I mentioned the Civil Rights Act. There are other settings, it can be under for people who are students who are being educated and not getting the equal services. So it can be for consumers who have been shorted by a corporation. So there's a variety of types of cases that can be brought under as long as they meet the requirements of Rule 23. And so you generally need a big enough group of people so that it doesn't make sense for them to go to court on their own, right?
Right.
Because if you got one person who has a problem, that's not a class action. That's a case that can be tried in court on behalf of that individual. But if there's some sort of common policy that's affecting lots of people, either there's a common policy that's affecting lots of people, then they can gather together and bring a case. If they have, I guess, what they call numerosity, they can bring a case in court.
And in working on class action suits, have you ever had people come in who are just dead certain that they're the main character, and they come in and they're like, I demand to be the one who sits at the table in court, and do you get that, or is it, I have no idea.
I think that it's kind of interesting the way it works. But yeah, no, typically that's not been my experience for class actions, I would say. Sometimes you get, I'll circle back, but that hasn't been my experience so much for class actions. Although some people do, they come to the table and they really want a sense of justice, and they kind of get excited about the whole process. But we also it's part of our obligation to educate them about their responsibility. Like anyone who ends up being the class member who comes forward, because sometimes a group of people come to you and they're like, I got this problem, and only one or two of them want to stick their necks out. Because actually, that's often the problem is we've got this problem. I don't want to be the brave one to act as the class rep. Why can't somebody else do it, since you only need one, or one for each? There are sometimes subclasses. So one of our obligations is to educate them about their responsibilities, and so they can't be all for them. They can't be all for themselves. They have to truly be working in. And they often have to sign something saying this, I commit to representing the class, and I commit to putting the class's interests before my own. And so that means, because you may have a scenario where the corporation is trying to say, hey, we'll give you, class rep, money to settle your claims, but as long as you dismiss this class action or something, right? Or or if you settled if that person's claim gets settled, then there's no longer a class rep, which doesn't actually kill the case. You can find another person, and it just it's their seeds can just keep popping up. You just bring in a new class rep, because presumably it's only a class action because everyone's got the same problem. But you educate the class rep about their duty to everybody. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Okay.
But on another note, kind of going down the line about what you're saying, is I have had people who are I want you to represent me. Have you seen this movie where lawyer's like a really hotshot person, and you know, media media about the law, just like they have like medical shows, right? Is this, I think, in a lot of ways can be a service to society, because it helps people on a level understand that there is a justice system, and that there are courts where they can hopefully have their day in court. You know, a lot of times they get, you know, TV shows get the law wrong. A lot of movies get the law wrong.
I was going to say, yeah, for like Suits, I was watching a couple seasons of Suits, and it seems very. How accurate is it? Like the show?
So I would say, I mean, when I took evidence in law school, I was like, what can I like watch? I went to my professor and I was asking, you know, what can I watch? You know, that's a good example of actual, like, accurate law. And the teacher said My Cousin Vinny is like the only movie that gets it right. And there are a few others, but My Cousin Vinny does a very good job on evidence, if you want to learn the rules.
We actually watched that scene about the car tread tires and the pause attraction thing in our evidence class. Yeah.
That movie does a good job with evidence. But yeah, a lot of shows get it wrong. And so I would say the greatest misconception that people come in with, or like Kerry Washington, like, you know, whoever like sends people to go work up a case like overnight, and then, you know, it's just like, things often take like they're sort of like long and plodding. And it involves, again, I'd say, like, people think it's all excitement and performance. And then in reality, like, my best skill set is that I can sit down and look at a huge stack of information and just slowly go through everything and be meticulous about it. Like, it's actually a slow and often unexciting process to, you know, from the client's perspective. And from the attorney's perspective, frankly, like, we're rarely in the courtroom. We're in front of our computers. You know, we you know, meet and talk and strategize, but, you know, a lot of the communications are done over the phone or an email. Court appearances are few and far between. The majority of cases don't go to trial. So I'd say, like, the excitement factor that a lot of people perceive is not typically there. I mean, some people structure their practices around going to trial more often, and that is more exciting, but like, we're rarely in the courtroom, I'd say.
Yeah.
Okay. So speaking about that, so you mentioned a couple things that I kind of want to redirect the discussion about AI effect on them. So at the beginning, you said that one of the skills that you had for going to law school was like the meticulous, like, reading stacks of information papers and get the facts from them. AI, LLMs, these generative AI that is going on right now is like kind of like feels like it's revolutioning all the fields as a whole, like the law field.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have your take on different parts, and we can go through it step by step. But the first one is like all this, like, going through archives and large stack of docs, how AI is used / reliable on kind of compressing these skills into like a prompt and a couple minutes and downloading all these archive and documents and like getting the answer of whatever you're looking for. And so this part is like more using AI as a tool. The other part that I want to discuss later is, as an employment lawyer, how AI is changing the hiring part. Like nowadays, usually like you talk to robots, AI robots, and not people, like when you do the interview, for example. And also these like employment suppression due to AI thing that is going on a lot, especially in the Bay Area. So let's go back to the use of AI as a tool. Did you see a big change in the like lawyering, and I'm more talking about like how you prep and use AI into your day-to-day job. I guess this could be like how do you call it, like a paralegal work that would assist a lawyer, and how AI is changing everything.
Yeah, it's a huge question, and I'll just start by saying, I find the whole thing, I feel like so flooded by it all. I'm constantly getting emails that are like, take this survey about the impact of AI and law, and that there are so many seminars on it, and so many products that people are pushing on lawyers, and it can sometimes be like, hey, like, I know how to do my job. Like, can I please like leave me alone so that I can do my job? But, in truth, it's a powerful tool. And so ignoring it can, cause you to waste a lot of time on things that it can help you out with. So, but, law is also like a historically, it's based in, it can be slow to reform, and not even related to AI. I would say, like, there were things up until 2020. There are things in the law that might seem ridiculous, especially for someone who works in tech in the Bay Area. But I think as a society, and then especially like and very much so in law, the pandemic shattered some narratives about the necessity to be present in a location for an event to occur. And so, for example, a lot of people started working from home, and hey, not for everybody, but for many of them, it worked just fine, right? And so the idea of like remote offices became, more popular in a lot of work settings. I would say that in the law, all of a sudden these hearings, which, serve their purpose, hearings, even if they're not like deciding a motion, even if it's just a hearing to a case management conference where you're checking in with the court, going to court, answering to the court about the status of the case, requires the parties to be, or at least the attorneys for the parties to be present and together. And I think that it serves the purpose of, maybe they're going to have a conversation about how we're going to settle this case, how are we going to resolve this conflict we've been having. Meeting IRL can be helpful for humanizing even an adversarial relationship. But the practical consequences of the pandemic made it so that people
in person.
People are doing hearings online a lot more. And during the pandemic, people were doing trials online, and sometimes there's just like more openness to video testimony and all sorts of things like that. So I think that in the last 5 or 6 years, the law has modernized a lot, at least as I'd seen it in California, in terms of just saying like, okay, these things that required us to come in, we can now do electronically. Depositions were similar. They were typically in person. Now they're often done remotely. And so, and again, like the purpose of getting everybody together was one, like technology limited in the past, they didn't have the technology. But now also it had the purpose of like truly getting all the parties together and maybe making people talk about resolutions of the case. So I don't really know how it's changed sort of the dynamics of litigation, other than we see the positive side is that it streamlines operations and makes things go faster and makes them more efficient from a litigation perspective. It's much easier to perform a deposition remotely than to have to get everyone in the same room, or to go to a hearing remotely rather than going to the courthouse and missing half a day of work. But I don't know how it impacts resolution of cases and things like that. I think that that's probably going to be some an area for study. But yeah, so the big question of AI is like another big, so I would say like Zoom revolutionized, Zoom during the pandemic revolutionized the aspects of the practice of law.
Yeah.
AI
Yeah,
is like this, a new wave, right? And maybe we're, it's a very cautious profession. We are bound by a lot of rules of professional responsibility and ethics. And so this new technology coming in that is like everybody's personal assistant raises a lot of questions for practitioners about like, how can we get in on this in a way that can streamline our practices, but also while meeting our ethical obligations. So in 2023, and I don't think I'd like ever used AI in 2023. I mean, I can't remember that far back, but lawyers were already thinking about this. And in California, the California Standing Committee on Professional Responsibility and Conduct came up with, back in 2023, a practical guidance for the use of generative artificial intelligence in the practice of law. So we've been hearing about it a lot, and like AI is coming, AI is going to affect our lives, but a lot of us weren't really even, I don't think, like even using it. But you know, the bar was thinking about it, and you know, basically they provided guidance with sort of a reminder of like what our general duties are as lawyers, like duty of confidentiality, duty of competence and diligence, duty to comply with the law, to supervise lawyers and non-lawyers, and subordinate lawyers, you know, with regard to, you know, communications. You know, we have a variety of responsibilities, and so AI was opening up a lot of questions around that. And so, you know, personally, I wasn't using it. I didn't feel like it was a safe thing for me to use in early years. But I have, and I feel like many in my practice have increasingly started to explore it. And part of that, there are sort of like, you know, early adopters. But I think like some of the main concerns that I had in terms of like things like Claude or Chat GPT, I was afraid to put anything in there because one of the things that one of our major responsibilities is maintaining the attorney-client privilege. So really, like putting anyone's private facts about a case could be dangerous. And so one of the things that people are advised to do, especially professionals, especially like lawyers or anyone who has a duty of confidentiality, because even if you're not putting in their facts, like anything that about your strategies, anything that comes out can be detrimental to your ability to effectively represent clients. And so, you know, there are things like you have to learn good AI hygiene. So if you're going to be using Claude or Chat GPT, you have to turn off its learning mechanisms and make sure it's, you know, secure so that it's not learning from anything you're doing. But then, you know, we have these questions just like, are the corporations, you know, from a consumer lawyer perspective, like, are these corporations actually, you know, providing the protections that they say they will, right?
Yeah,
because,
I think that's really interesting.
Their failure to do so could have, you know, major consequences for you know, your case or your practice or your, you know, your ability to continue practicing law.
I think that's really interesting in the context for me of when I was in school. There were, and it seems silly now maybe, but there were discussions about like, well, what Google Drive, was Google Drive safe? Is that private? And in the like technologically speaking, the security issues that need to be sorted out with LLMs and AI products are much more serious and potentially much more harmful, or I don't know, much bigger gaps in security, which I think is
and those, you know, those yeah, just staying on, there's so much to discuss, but staying on the security component, there's like lawyers using it. Is that a good idea or not? Like, when is it safe to do so? What are the like safe ways of doing it? And so yeah, turning off the learning, making sure that you're paying for, you're using a paid product that's going to provide like greater levels of security. Like, those are things you can do. But again, like, you know, putting your information in the cloud, putting it in these in Claude or Chat GPT, there are risks, you know, and they may be risks even if you've checked off every appropriate box. What if the company itself fails, you know? And so
yeah, I was going to say, you talked about AI hygiene. I understand the security thing, but what about the sort of work, the less confidential and more like archive paper, like documentation from previous cases and things that may not be confidential for that case, but help with the case.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. So yeah, like there was a CLE. I don't think I attended the panel itself, but I was reviewing some of the.
What is a CLE?
It's like credits, you know, attorney education credits,
Mm-hmm.
where I think about like motions. You know, to get a case from filing to trial, you may have to file some motions along the way related to like compelling the other side to produce discovery. And there are all these requirements like, you know, meeting and conferring in advance, or, you know, writing a summary judgment motion. So I recall someone who was a practitioner who was on the panel saying, I think I must have listened to the video. I don't think I saw it live, but I think I listened to the video after. Mm-hmm. Compile, like, you know, let's say you specialize in a field. Let's say you've had some cases that you've just like done a great job, kicked out of the park. You can, theoretically, you could, you know, in a vault or in like some sort of like enclosed AI system, whether it's, you know, there are a variety of systems. I keep mentioning the sort of basic consumer ones that lots of people know about, but there are a lot of specialized ones, including for the you know, things that are for the practice of law. But you could, upload a bunch of prior examples and use them. You know, in the past, I think a common practice was templates. Like, people would, if you're doing the same kind of, you know, running your cases basically through the same legal tests each time. So this is a sex harassment case. Here are the components of a sex harassment case. You're going to be stating the same, you know, body of law over and over again, right? And so you could take briefing that you had in the past and use that with AI, instead of having just like these sort of static templates. You can use that to generate something that's based on like a public, like, let's say you've got like a complaint that you filed, and so the facts are public. You could then theoretically say, hey, here's my case. Here's briefing that was done in the past for a case that had a similar legal issue. Can you like take the facts from my case and like smush it together? So instead of like a template where you might be filling in the blanks, just like asking AI to smush it together and put together a brief so we can file this motion. The thing is, like, and that's where like myself is like I'm you know, lawyers are risk averse. You know, I have to balance, if I'm thinking about like just like exploring the use of AI, I have to balance you know, making sure that I am doing it in a way that I feel is sufficiently secure, and like not putting any facts out that like not using it. I just feel uncomfortable using it for anything that's like that's not like a filed, like something that's in the pleadings, something that's in the register of actions in court, something like that, or something that's just like not, you know, obviously like attorney-client privilege at the time that I'm using it. But like, if all those circumstances exist, I'm only using like a filed complaint in like a previously filed brief, I still have to balance it with like, is it going to take me more time to supervise this unreliable system and like edit the draft that it gives me, or just like write it myself, write it myself and know that I have like I've processed everything and I haven't or like any hallucinations are coming from my brain and not from the computer. Because I mean, I think that, part of what those guidelines were for is like, there are all these products out there and, people don't always fully understand them, and attorneys in many areas of law, but also sadly, including employment law, including plaintiffs' employment attorneys, have used it. And I don't know, the circumstances, like all their circumstances, but like they may have been just simply like ignorant of what the technology was. Like maybe they already wrote the brief and then they just like ran it through AI to like shorten it or make it better, and then AI hallucinated something. Or maybe they were not doing their due diligence and just asked the machine to do it for them. And like, and so they file something and it has hallucinated cases. Oh yeah, because it's an assistant that wants to please, right? And so it says, oh yeah, like, you ask, is there a case on point for this? Oh yes, and then they make up a case. And you say, that's not a real case. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, here's a case. And it's like still made up. You can't really rely on it necessarily to actually get the law right. I think it's a very unreliable product. And so I am very hesitant to like even explore like using it for actually drafting like a motion, for example.
I see. So
because it's it makes stuff up. It's unreliable, and you don't really know. But I will say. Oh, do you have a question, Iman?
No, I was going to kind of summarize. You're saying that like it is a powerful tool, but the time, because you want to do your due diligence and you have to be the human in the loop. We always hear that, the human in the loop. So the fact that you have to prompt it and then go through it and check all the things that they are saying, that it's saying, if it's a real case or stuff, you better do it yourself, because it takes as much time to do the due diligence than do it yourself.
Yeah, it's like supervising a very junior, like a summer law clerk or something who does it, but worse, because the summer law clerk is probably like looking up the cases from a real place, and not just making things up. So it's supervising an unreliable agent. So and that becomes, for me, it's like, oh, do I need to like? It just becomes part of the like time-consuming deluge of of AI in general. And like, I think I've never been like I'm an adopter. I adopt eventually, but I'm not like a first adopter, I would say. And so perhaps I'm just like waiting to see how things play out and being cautious. Yeah, but that said, there are things where it's like, yeah, you've done the work, you've written the complaint. Perhaps you can use AI to like break it up into things that might be like, oh, could you turn this into an outline? Could you break this up so that it, like you're helping it, help me just pull out all the paragraphs that have to do with this, that mention this witness. Like, there are things that are simple that that you can do to save time. And so, like, yeah, I toy around with it. For lawyers, we rely on, in litigators, we rely on case law, and in a variety of sources, the Constitution, statute, and then judicial interpretations of the law, so cases. There are a few major vendors for that. So there's LexisNexis and Westlaw are the best known ones, and like, the thing about AI, it's like, it's hard to not adopt now, because when I was looking to sort of renew my contracts for my legal research vendor, it was like, really between AI, Westlaw and LexisNexis, and they both were basically pushing, like, hey, for a really cheap price, you can have this, and also this is what we're transitioning to anyway, so you have to deal with it, an AI version. So, previously if I needed to look for a case, and that the function's still there, but like I would use all these sort of almost like coding terms, like these to do the search, like advanced colon, parentheses, this or that, and XYZ dash, like within 5 words, like these 2 words are, these terms within 5 words of each other. So, you could do some advanced searches that I'd kind of grown comfortable with. And now I would say and then you could also do natural language searches back in the day, pre-AI. And I found those to be like kind of unhelpful, the natural language search, because it would just give you 1,000 cases. You wouldn't get, a narrower set of cases that are more on topic. But now I would say like AI almost within Westlaw and LexisNexis can kind of serve as like a more effective natural language search. Because it actually gives you, if you do a natural language search, like write the sentence about the thing you want, it's more likely to give you the cases you want. And when you're using Westlaw or LexisNexis, you have it's the library of what is usable has been put into those programs, and so it's not going to hallucinate a case for you. It's not going to hallucinate an authority because it has a fixed body
data,
that is real. We're only drawing from real cases, so it might draw the wrong conclusions if it starts to elaborate, like, oh, this is what the case says. No, you can't trust that. But it's not going to. It may hallucinate what the case is about. It's not going to hallucinate that the case exists at all.
That still seems crazy to me, though, because it was such a big. I mean, that was such a big teaching point for some of our professors of like, you can't. This isn't Googling something. You can't just put in what your search query that you think you need is, find the first case that seems to apply to whatever topic we're researching here. Take that and be like, yes, this case proves my point. Like when you're doing case law research, isn't there a certain extent of you sort of, you want to drill down, you want to make sure you have the case that really specifically applies to the nuanced point that you're trying to make and doesn't have, like, I wouldn't even trust an AI search to handle that necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I think LexisNexis, but you can ask, like, you have to start somewhere. So you like when you're doing legal research, whether you're doing like this specially coded, advanced search or a natural language search, you're just like using the electronic database to try to get to a starting point. And there are lots of points of entry. So you could do it, start with a book, like they have, tomes on employment law or whatever body of law, and use that to find like, oh, this is the kind of basic main case on point, and then search that case, every case that's cited that.
So
there's
it's
already
really
been
not
a network.
Yeah.
It's not really changing it a lot, but now
it's not usurping any of the research. You still have to learn how to understand. Yeah, like it's not changing that at all.
That's something that I fear, though, is like people are going to be early adopters. People are going to learn how to use. I mean, students, I'm sure, are using AI all the time now, and on some level, and like I know someone who's a doctor who works at Kaiser, and like she's like in my everyone I know, they're like kind of, a lot of people I know are activists, and they're like very concerned about AI. This person at Kaiser loves AI because they are early adopters of AI, and it's streamlining their practice, and it's making them be able to concentrate on the patient. But like she's had her education already in the older way of doing things, and like, so I feel like I feel like I could, I can adopt some AI stuff, and have my legal education and the training that I got about, finding, how to find your case, what's a credible source, not ceding the work to, or like trusting the AI product. And so I think that, like, yes, increasingly professionals may start, find themselves supervising the AI. But how do you educate like the next generation that only knows AI, right?
Yes,
who are going to be who is going to demonstrate excellence in like the body of knowledge, when everyone has this sort of resource that can help them pull up things and produce things potentially pretty
Yes.
quickly. Who's going to supervise us? Who's going to educate us? How are we going to get educated?
So
Right.
this is a great segue actually to what I was going to ask you, which was the adaptation of the job of a lawyer for the future generations. Like
Yeah.
your generation, my generation, our generation, we graduated without this AI emphasis at our time.
Yeah.
This is completely changing the AI environment. These LLMs, this new generative AI, and all these tools are like improving week after week. Like it's not months, years, it's weeks. So you can see a better model coming where it's like, in the chat, I see people saying like good system instruction, preloading data and search sources, and you can avoid fewer hallucination. We spoke about that. So what do you think? So, the like the new people that are training to be a lawyer, what do you think? Is it like a job that is going to be completely replaced by AI, or if it's not, how is it going to change? What is the new, like, we talked about like software engineers being like now supervisor of like agents who are working for them. How is the
Yeah.
new lawyer 2050 is going to look like, and what is the education, how the education, how is law school adapting and changing
Yeah.
nowadays?
I mean, I don't know, because I'm not in, like, so I guess I guess my just guess would be, yeah, more like few, just like expanded capacity. And so it depends on how you want to use it. So like, yes, maybe one paralegal or a legal assistant can do a lot more, because, as long as they like, because they can use AI to get a lot more of their work done. Or it can be an attorney that no longer needs the assistant, because they can get a lot more of their work done. So this is more like, futurism, like speculating into the future. One thing I've thought about is like, some people just like want more pie, so they'll scale up and have maybe more cases. One way that I've thought about it though is like perhaps for litigators, the stuff in between, like the assembly of the case, that might move more quickly, and maybe we'll get to trial or get to a point where we're negotiating that, we know enough to negotiate a settlement about what the value of the case is. So, I'm thinking like, oh, I got to brush up on my trial skills because it might be easier to get there. And maybe that's where I'm going to have to, show my value is the places where we actually do things in front of people and jury trials. Convincing, a jury of my peers to find in favor of my client. I don't know.
Maybe the jury would be
But
AI.
I would say like, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say maybe the jury would be
Oh,
AI.
I hope
You
not.
saw the recent
I hope
movies?
not, and I hope
Not
it's
a
not
jury
like
of your peers if
a
it's
joke that I
AI.
tell with like a joke that my friends I had friends, not employment lawyers, but that they were making was like, oh yeah, like my agent will be talking to your agent. We just like won't have to interact anymore. Our
was
agents will
literally a
like make
movie
our
about that.
email
There
like,
was a movie recently, right? About like someone was convicted and they are considered guilty until they prove to the AI that they are innocent. There was a recent movie about that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, due process is good, and hopefully we get to maintain all of our rights under the current administration. So, yeah.
So
I don't know. But also for law school, we were interested in this question and like had a panel that included law people who work at law schools. And one of the things that the sort of positive things that they were talking about for learning was that, we have to digest and learn a lot of material, and you can like ask your personal assistant AI person to be your tutor, like design me a study, like a study plan for the semester, and then like verbally test me with scenarios on the rules of like evidence or civil procedure, because they do have like an audio component where you can talk back and forth. So, you can, if you use it right, like instead of just like having it do the thinking for you, you can ask it to help train you. That I think is like a potentially like helpful thing that people could use AI for. It's like, I want to learn a new skill, or I want to learn my law stuff for my exam, like actually train me.
As particularly pertains to law school, I think that's such a funny juxtaposition, though, because the chatbots are sort of the opposite of what you get from professors in law school. I mean, like everything
Right,
you say
yeah,
in law school, a professor is like, even if you're dead on 100%, a professor is likely to be like, okay, so explain your reasoning, or, give me the underlying case law, give me your justification. And whereas a chatbot, you could say something crazy and the chatbot will be like, that's a great point. You know what?
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that should be a rule of evidence.
I agree. But like, I think you can, ask. I know it's really hard for them, but you can like ask them to be more or less skeptical. You could ask them to try and be Socratic. I don't know.
I would be curious how successful that could be given.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
but like it's it's something
Yeah.
where it's this time when a lot of people can like just experiment with it and see what it could
Sure.
do, and it's like, because for whatever reason people make it feel so inevitable, it's like something to adopt. For people who are curious, it's worth it to like see what it might be able to do. The advice I got, and this was not in the law context, I was like, I had a friend who was doing trainings on AI. I was like, what is this thing? Like, when would I use it? Like at that point, I was like, it wasn't in my, LexisNexis or my Westlaw. Like, it wasn't in everything that I used already. And the person just gave me, the advice that they gave me was like, use it when you don't want to do something. Like when something in your life isn't getting done, maybe ask AI to help you, like do a first go at it, or give you some advice on it, or push the project along. So that's how I started experimenting. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Any
I
more-
have another question in terms of like the dangerous use of AI in law that I read about recently, and I wanted to have your input about it. It
Sure.
was, recently, I think it's Anthropic who talked about the Mythos AI, Mythos or Mythos, I don't know how you pronounce it, but anyway, basically it's like an AI that is going to look for security vulnerabilities, basically in a code, for example. We can see it like this. And the article was talking that like AI could be used to do the same thing for different domain. And he was specifically talking about law. So, like the laws, you can find loopholes in the laws and use them in your advantage. We can see as like an AI who goes through like these laws and find you all the loopholes that you can use.
Yeah.
Exactly, in order to like push and do whatever you want with it, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can we counter that? How can we like save ourselves from that? When you see, and you were mentioning before, law is very slow to change. Even if like someone finds the loopholes, in order to counter attack by closing the loopholes,
Yeah.
it's a long process and a hassle, and you're not even sure of doing it. So
Yeah, I mean, AI, I feel like has been a big subject of conversation. I was talking about those guidelines for lawyers. They're finally look in 2026, they're looking to like amend our rules of responsibility to include laws about to include AI information. So it's all going to be our same rule of ethics, but amended to, if they adopt it, to have rules about AI. But yeah, like there are a lot of bills in the legislature in California to regulate AI. But there's a lot of industry support for unregulated AI. So I don't think that they've been successful, but like probably like a half a dozen bills were introduced recently. I don't think they succeeded, but a lot of times like when there's a legal change on the horizon, it's like you submit a bill the first year it doesn't get passed, but like by the third year, some of these bills start, moving. Second or third year, the bills start getting passed. Something comes through. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that California, right, I think that on the federal level right now, there's a big push for progress over regulation.
Yeah.
And so there's no safety, there's not a lot of safety. But in California, there are attempts to regulate, and, you could see something making it through in the next few years. But yeah, I don't know, it's just like everything seems to be moving faster and at a greater scale, and yeah, things like in all areas, it's like encryption, passwords, code breaking, hacking, all that stuff. It's just really wild. One thing I say, just like for all the gamers out there who may have a case, something I just have to bring this up before this. We've got a good amount of time left in the show, but it just came to mind. The thing I wanted to say is, like, we as employment lawyers really don't like receiving intakes that are AI generated, and we can tell, and we don't like it. And it makes us less likely to take your case. That would be like, that's at least my opinion, and the opinion of many of my peers, is like, since AI has become more prevalent in terms of consumer use, instead of getting someone's, like, in their own words, statement about what happened to them, we're getting a lot of stuff that's like, I have like a, easy, high reward case, then here's the smoking evidence, and here's where the everything the pivot point, and it's just like using all this terminology. It usually has like weird things bolded, or just like formatted in a way that seems to have been done by AI.
The M dash.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because, again, like, AI makes stuff up. AI is usually, like, often gets answers wrong, and so you're like, is this what happened? I don't know. I feel more like I trust someone saying what happened in their own words, even if they're not, highly educated, great writers. Just I believe that they will put down what happened, and then instead we're getting stuff where it's like, maybe it's even getting all the facts right, but it's like lawyering for us, which is really, we just want to look at the facts and then think how we would frame it. It's annoying. So I actually have a very good friend who is a lawyer, who recently put up a disclaimer on her website next to her contact me page, and it was like, I'm happy to name her Hillary Hamill. She's brilliant, but she has a website, and on her website it says something along the lines of, next to the contact page, I'm a real human lawyer who represents real human clients, and if you submit an intake to me that appears to use AI, I will, not look at it. And she actually says that disclaimer has helped her intakes, and that it kind of has effectively limited or ended the use of AI. And just like as like a public service announcement, people should be really careful about using AI to try to answer their legal questions.
Yeah.
Like, and lawyers will sometimes be like, yeah, I didn't represent that person because it was like their AI lawyer was constantly questioning me, and it's like they're
Right.
trying to take you down rabbit holes that like aren't significant, aren't gonna help move the case along, aren't gonna be good for your credibility, and this tool that they perceive as having a lot of the world of knowledge at its fingertips is like, it's kind of just giving them a bunch of red herrings, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and so it's annoying to deal with someone who's consulting their AI lawyer, but also they need to be careful because the law is not settled about whether your AI searches are discoverable in a case. So there was a case, U.S. versus Hepner, in the Southern District of New York. It was a criminal case, okay? So that's, different stakes apply, different rules apply. But the judge in that case held that attorney-client privilege did not apply to criminal defendants' exchanges with Claude for 3 reasons. 1, Claude is not an attorney. Anthropic's privacy policies state that Claude uses inputs and outputs to train Claude, so they haven't taken off the training. I don't think they were paying for the, I don't think they checked off all the boxes to take off the training. And defendant didn't use Claude at the suggestion of counsel. So this is probably someone who's like, okay, what are some legal ideas for, what are my questions about my criminal case? And so I guess, the other side, the government was able to discover through and obtain their searches, which, and that work product, another protection, that we don't have to disclose our work product. And if our client is writing something to us, that never gets discovered either. That's protected as work product. We're just, everything that we do behind the scenes is protected for the most part, and from public disclosure, whatever. And the court held in that case that work product doctrine did not apply even if the AI documents were prepared in anticipation of litigation, because they weren't prepared at the behest of counsel. So this is just someone who, in their free time, not because their counsel had asked them to, was asking AI questions about their criminal case. So that people should, lawyers are concerned about it, because it's if someone comes to us and they've been heavily relying on AI, a court theoretically in California could go the same way as this federal court in the Southern District of New York. So that's a possible avenue. And so it's scary to us that what our clients may have done before they engaged us could be discoverable. That's scary. So putting disclaimers, having a real conversation, educating your client about AI is important for lawyers right now. There are other cases. So there's the Eastern District of Michigan that came out different. Defendant's motion to compel production of documents and information concerning the use of AI tools in connection with the lawsuit was denied, saying ordinarily a party may not discover documents and things prepared in anticipation of litigation by a party or its representative. The material sought was subject to the work product doctrine. Waiver argument fails because waiver must be to an adversary or in a way likely to get to an adversary. So because I was anyway, so cases have come out in different directions. But I was, when I heard about the Southern District of New York case, I was like, what about our Google searches? What is on this big World Wide Web is sacred anymore, or ever was, we don't, it's worrisome. And presently unregulated, and it's the kind of thing where, you kind of wait and see what's going to happen. Yeah. So but you act cautiously in advance. So PSA to everybody out there: if you're reaching out for a lawyer, write your intake message to them in your own words, and they may not appreciate you relying on your AI lawyer when you're talking to them.
Yeah. So this may be more technical than Chad is interested in, but I guess it occurs to me that a part of preparing for trial, part of preparing cases is a lot of discovery, right? Which is just sharing of information for chat. You're sending big box. Well, you used to send a huge box of documents or stacks of boxes of documents. Now it's digital. You're sending, you're sending files and things. But a lot of that revolves around if you're doing discovery and someone is sending you 10,000 documents, they will often also send you a summary, or at least a table of contents, or I don't know. This was my experience. Is there been any issues, or have you personally run into anyone trying to pass off AI summaries in things like discovery? Because discovery seems trivial to someone from the outside, but it's crucially important. A lot of trials revolve around discovery. The very important appellate case that you were second chair on, one of the main issues in that was revolving around the discovery and some of the other, or is that right? Yeah, it was. There
were a lot of issues in that case.
Yeah.
But did plaintiff have an adequate opportunity to discover facts in the case because the other side was like obstructing things? Well, that's like often comes up, or vice versa. Is the plaintiff hiding information that defendant feels that it has a right to access in discovery? Because discovery is very broad, especially and including in California. What's relevant in discovery is anything that would it includes things that would lead to admissible evidence, so it can be beyond even stuff that you'd be able to get in trial, that just allows each side to get the full facts about the case. And there are limits on it so that you don't abuse the process of a fishing expedition. But yeah, it's big, and it can, there are cases that can have a ton of documents. Before AI became the thing, there are a lot of vendors that third-party vendors that increasingly are cloud-based, so you can interact with them on your own, through an online app or something like that, for document review. And they have just gotten exponentially better. It's amazing how I don't know if it's AI or what technology, just imaging technology, but it's just gotten so much better in the years of my practice, going from trying to convert I can convert a PDF into a Word document pretty easily, and vice versa, but also read, make it searchable, OCR it or otherwise, make it searchable really easily. So I think that AI, I haven't had any issues with defendants in AI and discovery or whatever, but I think that AI can theoretically seems to have the potential to you certainly have to be careful, but has there's a potential for Anthropic to be able to take over a lot of the work that would otherwise have been done by these vendors, that just allow you to upload thousands of documents and then search through them. And I certainly know that there have been some that there are AI products and lots of AI startups, probably mostly people who want to get acquired by the bigger companies, but that where they sort of market to us about you can upload all these documents, you're going to have a closed body of documentation, and it our model learned off of other lawyers doing the same kind of cases, and it can help you find the good evidence or find holes in their arguments, or help you do the analysis. And I just think it's all interesting, but you still have to make sure that you have a good command on the facts.
Yeah, well, if you miss something in something like that, is it on the company who's created the product, or is it on the lawyer still?
I think it's on the lawyer to, we don't see responsibility, they don't take responsibility for their search tools, because a lot of times it'll be okay, give me this all the exchanges that mention my client, let's say, by their manager. And they're oh, well, this person worked here for so long, there are thousands of documents. And then it's okay, well, give me more specific search terms, old, or I don't know, whatever, a name that they were calling, or a nickname that they were using for the person, or something like that. For example, I have a case where it would have been Pamela Anderson, search this person's, yeah, no, it's our, so sometimes it's the body is very large, and then you narrow it with search terms, and so you're maybe missing stuff, but if you're but if you again, for me, it goes back to the selection of the case. Usually what you want is, when you are selecting a case, is a case that has really strong facts, including evidence that may already be in the possession of the plaintiff, or that they have logged, we know we're going to be able to go find these particular documents, and you're hopefully not really doing a fishing expedition, relying on trying to find something you didn't know about in the discovery process. But there are cases where like might be like a class action, and you're trying to get a sense of will a longer like a 3-year statute of limitations apply instead of a 2-year statute of limitations because there was willfulness. This was done willfully. You have to prove like that they knew that they were violating the policy, and so you might be like more interested in getting all of the evidence you possibly can, even if you just like have a little bit. You might be trying to get more, like to strengthen the evidence that like how widespread was the knowledge of the violation, blah 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 blah. Or for punitive damages, where you're trying to say, this failure to follow company policies went all the way to the top. It wasn't just like the low-level manager who messed up here. It was like the executives, blah, blah, blah.
Right. So it sounds like a really high-risk application to those of us who are not well-versed in law, but actually you probably already have what you need, and this is just extra searching.
Like I wouldn't go so far to say that, but sometimes, but it's always going to be on the lawyer. Even when you've got these class actions, it's always on the lawyer, whether it's the AI product that you're using to search, or using a vendor. It's sometimes like law firms, like a bigger team. If a case is involving bigger teams of lawyers, you might have like a bunch of people doing the doc review, and so like human error has always been part of it, and the duty is on the lawyer. It's never on it's not really on the vendors.
I have a question about employment now with AI. I've seen many cases where there's like this kind of like AI in the name of like productivity, like tracking, surveillance of like the login or the obligation. I've seen that in I think Meta or something, where they oblige their worker to use AI and they track that and things like that. That's so weird.
Yeah.
And what's the law about that? And like, where do you draw the line between like productivity, corporation thing, and like improving tools and stuff, and like unlawful dictatorship or surveillance and things like that?
Where do we draw the line? Good question.
I don't know if it's legal. Are they allowed to do that? Like, what can we?
Yeah, so I would say like a lot of the concern these days is about around AI. I would say, hold on, I'm just like looking at is reflected in proposed legislation. So yeah, I mean, for a long time, a lot of like, especially bigger employers, like we have privacy rights, right? Google shouldn't go to Google and our phones. They shouldn't be listening to us and using that to give us ads or anything like that, right? So those are consumer privacy rights. And so sort of like one interesting area of the law, of employment law, is like the intersection of those consumer protections when you go into the employment setting. Because a lot of employers are like, oh, I have like thousands of employees who I can study because they use my computers. And so the kind of privacy, you don't, in California, for example, you don't have an expectation of privacy in your work email. I mean, there are things like employers are probably supposed to tell you if they're recording you, but you don't you don't forward your work emails directly to a lawyer because the assumption is that your employer would be able to monitor that activity. And so yeah, monitoring by employers has been a big thing even before AI became a big thing. And so yeah, it really raises questions when your employer can do things that that they can't do to their customers. They can do things to you as an employee, kind of like using you as like almost like a lab rat or an experiment or a productivity maximization experiment, or just like researching you for all sorts of other things that like people want to know about, right? Do you carry your consumer privacy protections into the workplace? And I don't think that's like a very well regulated aspect of the law right now. So here are some of the AI bills proposed in California recently. SB 7 is a No Robo-Bosses Act.
Yeah,
that was
what is this?
vetoed.
I heard about that.
Your boss can't be. AB 1018, automated decision systems, stalled in the Senate. SB 328, workplace surveillance tools, stalled in the Assembly. SB 366, AI and employment, died in Appropriations Committee. AB 1331, workplace surveillance, stalled in the Senate.
So these
and
are bills that are
AB
not laws, though.
1221, workplace surveillance tools, died in Appropriations. These are tools. These are proposals that didn't pass, and they do a variety of things. But it's like a lot of them are like, don't surveil your workers unnecessarily in the workplace. If you're going to fire someone, there needs to be a human involved. And so it's like this idea, you could think about it like all these people who aren't exactly who are in like using apps, right? Like working for Lyft or Uber or whatever. Like people sometimes get their app shut off, and they're not in any sort of traditional employment relationship.
Independent from it.
They're independent contractors, but also like they're in a quasi situation. It's like independent contractors plus certain protections provided by this like voter approved ballot measure that was promoted by over $200 million of investment by big tech companies, so that people who are app-based drivers have their own set of rules, but they're not employees. And you talk to people, like I occasionally use those services, and people be like, they shut off my app. And I didn't do anything wrong. I was there, but like blah, blah, blah. Like there's a glitch in the system. And it's like, were they fired by a person or were they fired by an algorithm? And so, I think there have been legislative proposals that say there needs to be human involvement in like material employment decisions, such as hiring.
What about the hiring? Because
that's the thing too, right? And the problem is AI is made by humans, learns from human content, and shares some problematic biases that exist. It's a reflection of, in a way, of who we are. And so it shares some problematic biases that exist in our society. And so it can be subject to, making discriminatory, like the algorithm may have an outcome that is either intentionally or accidentally discriminatory. Advertising only to men, advertising to people only under a certain age. Those kind of things can happen. And I think that they were happening with algorithms before, and now it could be the AI that's perpetrating the issue.
How do you protect yourself? Like you sue an AI? Like what do you do?
Well, that's, I think, honestly, certain types of negative acts, this is also like, I would analogize it to pay equity. Pay equity is something where like people legislatively have been trying to like make pay information more transparent, because it's like, how do you sue someone? You're like, I think that I'm getting paid less. I think it might be because I'm a woman. But I don't have all the data because it's not public anywhere. And I can't get, so basically it's like you have to sue.
Cannot get it from the
you have to sue them sometimes, but people may end up suing before they actually have all the facts. And sometimes it turns out, hey, they're right. Sometimes it turns out, nope, the data doesn't reflect that. So, but like, what if someone from HR blows the whistle and they say, oh, I saw the data, those are the good cases. It's like and so that's like, it's really I think it's a concern of mine, is that when it's a computer system, it's an algorithm, it's AI, and it's like, some division of a company, like way up at the top is monitoring it or not monitoring it. And, the worker may feel like something weird happened to them, and may have limited ability to discover whether it was part of like some sort of a legal process. And so whistleblowers become really important,
Yeah, but it's so hard
for
to
those kind of
rely
cases.
on that.
What'd you say?
Yeah. It's hard to rely on whistleblowers because it's like so random, right?
Well, no, but when I say whistleblower, I mean like somebody in HR or somebody in the department who is either at the company or leaves the company and says, I saw this thing, it wasn't right, it was illegal. And maybe they complain about it and get fired, and then they become a plaintiff in a case, or they provide information to someone who they talk to who's like, I think I was getting underpaid, and they're like, I left this company because I know you're right, and here's what I know, here's what to ask for. Who knows? I mean, like, but it's hard. It's really hard, and that's, I think, why people are trying to regulate it, because it's hard to know without regulation.
Is the employer required by law to disclose if there is a surveillance on the employee?
So yeah, like I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, because I would imagine, certainly, I would doubt that there would be any federal regulation like that. And then it would be like a state by state thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
So from like a scientific
Seems
standpoint,
like a good regulation.
Yeah.
The science, from a scientific standpoint, the science community has shown like repeatedly that these models are biased. So there's like no question to that.
Right.
So from like my scientific standpoint is that they are biased until you prove that they are not biased.
Yeah. Right. And in the law, like you can create legal presumptions. Like, okay, it's going to be on the employer to prove that it's not biased. Like that. You could write a law that says you have to like disclose your algorithm, so that like people can determine whether it is biased or not, and then when you go to court, like the initial burden is on the employer to prove it's not biased. Like, sure, yeah, that'd be great. I mean, scientists working with regulators and lawmakers seems like a good match. It's just right now, the political climate, at least on the federal level, is such that deregulation is the
word.
road. Yeah.
Right.
I see. What about if like, so you get fired because of AI? I hear that all the time, especially in the Bay Area. Do you have like some cost for suing or things like that? Because like you have like positive reviews all the time, and there is a layoff because of AI, and the company doesn't even tell you exactly why. They just say this is AI thing. Is it legal to do that?
I don't think there are many laws that protect workers against AI right now. I think that there are people that the law that sort of comes to mind is that right now there's an analogous law. There's a law that exists that says if a big enough employer is about to lay off a large enough number of people, they have to warn them. It's called the WARN Act. It's a federal act, in advance. So they need some warning. They can't just be like locked out, right? They need to know some number of weeks before they're about to lose their job if a big layoff is coming. And that's called the WARN Act. You get a WARN notice, and you can adjust. And so some of the legislative proposals have been to create a sort of like WARN Act for AI. Like, you are being terminated because AI took your job. It's like it's a disclosure. AI took your job. And so that is something that people are contemplating as a sort of Warren Act for jobs lost based on AI.
Wow.
I mean, losing a job because your position was eliminated for any reason is stressful and unpleasant, but I guess it seems silly to me that it only because AI is such maybe a substantial driver of that in the current climate, people
Yeah.
are trying to
Yeah.
optimize things and eliminating a lot of people. But I don't. I feel like it's fair to say there aren't a lot of laws governing AI in general right now, which is maybe an overgeneralization, but it's a little concerning because I feel like
Yeah.
we're pressing you on a lot of these questions, and the answer seems to be, well, I don't think there's any laws that really apply to that situation.
Yeah, and it's like people
but
are
maybe there should
people
be.
are very concerned, and yeah, and they're proposing them, and there needs to be like enough pressure on politicians to act. But again, like very powerful employers, tech companies, they're lobbying against regulation, and there's a lot of asymmetry in who has the funds to pay for lobbying and advocacy.
Yeah.
So it moved very slowly, and you do. It sounds like you do mostly plaintiffs' work, but I'm curious: are you seeing in like employment agreements or in negotiations? Are you seeing a lot of clauses about AI stuff or negotiations about AI stuff? Because I'm sure the employers want to use it and want as little regulation on what they can do as they can get away with, but that seems like an issue that might start to come out.
Yeah, I haven't really experienced it, but another PSA for all you gamers out there is that when you get hired, you should take a look at what your employment contract says, because one misconception that people have is if they need to sue, whether it's a company or as a consumer or as an employee, that they'll have their day in court. And that is decreasingly the case because the Supreme Court has created a body of law that has a very expansive reading of what's the Federal Arbitration Act, that basically says most employees and consumers can sign away their right through contract to have their day in court, and agree through contract, whether they're clicking through to get something online or signing up to be employed by an employer, they can end up sort of unwittingly signing an arbitration agreement where they waive their right to a trial and instead have to proceed with any claims that they have before a private arbitrator who may or may not work for a company that has been selected by their employer or by the company that they're purchasing from. So just, when you get hired, look through your entire contract and, see if you are being asked to sign an arbitration agreement, because you may be signing away your right to your day in court.
Oh, wow. I never heard about that. I've never had the idea of reading any
I know
contract.
people don't think about it. It's kind of a weird thing to have to explain to people, but yeah, people habitually sign away their right to sue and have a jury of their peers hear their case, to have the right to appeal a verdict, and instead they just have a private arbiter decide the dispute.
Yeah, I think a lot
so
of
for
people
those
would
of us
be.
who we don't know about law, what is an arbitration and how is it different from court?
Yeah, when you go to court, you have rights, such as specific rules of procedure and rules of evidence, and you have the right to have your case managed and maybe heard by a judge who is typically appointed or elected or and somehow publicly accountable and is a public figure. And you may have a right to a jury of your peers. So, people from your community get to weigh the facts and decide if there's a dispute between the employer and the employee, for example, who's telling the truth. And then they get to say, has the plaintiff proven their case? And what is their monetary award if they have? And if the parties disagree on the outcome of the case or some ruling by the court, they have a right to appeal it to a higher level, the appellate level, where they just decide, they decide appellate issues, and then you can maybe go up to your Supreme Court in your state or the United States Supreme Court. So to decide, legal issues. The facts are usually left to the trial court. So none of that public airing of facts before, in a way that's managed by judges, before juries of your peers, that has appealable issues. None of that stuff exists in arbitration. It's just you go to a private person. Doesn't have to be a lawyer. But usually it's like a former lawyer, or sometimes it's a former judge, sometimes it's a random person hired by the company, and they decide the dispute after you have, marshaled some evidence before them. And so it's basically like a very informal trial where the rules of evidence don't apply and there aren't quite the same rules of procedure. And so there's just less sunlight on the issues. So it's not like people are getting, it's not a publicly decided fact. It's a privately decided dispute. And so there isn't the light of day on corporate misconduct. And if you feel that the case was decided wrongly or that there was an error, like it's very narrow set of circumstances where you'd actually be able to file an appeal. And so basically corporations get to settle any disputes that they have kind of in the dark in a non-public proceeding.
Right.
So great, it's not good. And for sort of airing the issues that happen when laws get broken. Another issue is you can sign away your right to a class action. So you can't you can sign away your ability to bring a class action in arbitration, which is not good. And so, if a company is like cheating consumers in some way, but it's like, not worth a lot of money individually, not very many people are going to bring those consumer claims in arbitration. And certainly not at the volume that would have the kind of impact that would, perhaps make the company want to change its practices or have like a public, have people publicly aware of the bad practices. So it's like, it really, arbitration also harms the ability for people to engage in impact litigation that represents the rights of many in one proceeding.
Another question for you. What is the future most litigated AI-related employment issue that we will see in the future with AI? What do you think?
I don't know.
Well, you see everything through the lens of being a lawyer, I'm sure, but I'm curious. What do you interface with AI in your personal life? Do you use it for
that was sort of
anything or?
Yeah, that was the first place I interfaced with it. My friend saying, if there's ever anything you don't want to do, have AI do it. So I think I had it create an itinerary for a vacation, and I put in a very long prompt with all the things I wanted to do, and I was like, oh, could you also add like a restaurant in the area for like all those things, because we're moving around a lot. All the restaurants were like really wrong and like all like across the city and that kind of thing. So, but it did a great job of very quickly formatting. And so like my lesson was like, oh yeah, if I need like a good formatting job and I don't, this again might be something in a business sense that like a legal assistant or a paralegal might do, is like formatting the document. Like, oh yeah, it's really good for that. But like, yeah, the accuracy of the prompt wasn't. So I do that, like itineraries or sort of like plans for, make a plan for doing this thing. But I don't, and like, yeah, if there's like a letter I need to write that's like in a personal context, that's a pain in the butt, like maybe I'll have it draft that. My spouse, though, does like vibe coding, which seems to be something that is highly assisted by AI. And he is, sort of just for fun, designing a video game in his free time. And it's amazing because he doesn't have a coding background, but he has, creative ideas, and he just kind of spends a little bit of time every day making them a reality, and that's really cool.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, in your opinion, it is still worth it to go into law school? It's not going to disappear. We always say, like, for future, like, graduate or people who are thinking about going to law school.
Yeah. And I don't go, I don't go to law school. I do sometimes go and help out at things that like occur at the law school. And so I'm sometimes there and sometimes hearing like word of what's going on. And I heard this thing and then I saw it in an article, but like apparently firms, and I don't know if it's AI, what it's related to, but firms right now are hiring. So especially sort of for business litigation and defense, like business defense litigation, there's like hiring programs for bigger firms, and typically you get like hired for your big law job in a later year of law school. So if you're like a 2L or a 3L, you get your job offer from one of the big firms that has a hiring program. Right now, they're hiring people as 1Ls. They're interviewing 1Ls, the people who are first year law students, for out of law school jobs. And I don't understand why. I don't get it.
Yeah,
why are they doing that? I don't know. So I don't know what's going on with that industry, what's going on there. And I think that, no, people should go to law school. I think, it is critical that people in society have good reasoning and logic skills and like understand how to function as a society, and hopefully I think law schools have a lot of learning that happens in class, where you're questioned and sort of question again, and really kind of testing your abilities to keep pushing on issues and thinking critically about them. So yeah, I think it's a terrific education, even if you don't want to be a lawyer. It gives you great critical thinking skills, and certainly, like for a while, we're still figuring out how it's all going to play out in the law. But yeah, I mean, it's I once heard an excellent talk by someone who made the point that, in like a case, like once a jury has decided a case, they have decided facts. They have decided, like between two people telling a story, they've decided which one was telling facts. You're creating facts in a way that, and a level of certainty that kind of doesn't exist anywhere else. It's like these people decided what the facts were before them. And so, yeah, I mean, it's critical that you have, that you maintain skilled people who are going to be able to like faithfully develop those facts and bring them before a jury, and then hopefully you have a jury with the critical thinking skills that are dutifully not staying offline and making decisions for themselves. So it's a beautiful part of our legal system, and I hope that it continues to exist. And I think that we're going to continue to need to educate people so that they can serve that system.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Bob? What do you think about law school?
I think law school is great. As far as what I got from it, and even I would say by halfway through my 2L year, I had pretty much decided being an actual lawyer was not exactly what I thought it would be, but I saw other paths. Like I was going to go in a different direction, but I still wanted to finish my degree, and I did. Um, I learned a lot. I learned stuff that has been invaluable, even as a internet podcaster, comedian, and what I'm doing now. It's been very valuable. The one thing I would warn people against is the expense. There are lots of ways to get education, and there are not maybe closely comparable ways to get the kind of education that you get from law school, but there are ways to get similar stuff and similar experience and similar valuable
Yeah.
education that are not as expensive. Law school is
Yeah.
not the kind of grad school where they'll pay you to be a TA or where you could. It just is expensive. I made the extra
Yeah.
stupid mistake of going to a smaller private law school, which was
Yeah.
even
No,
more
law
expensive.
school-
But like, it just is expensive, and if
Yeah.
if you're
how do
not
you
going to have a
mitigate?
lucrative career afterwards, it's tough to get out from under the loans.
Yeah, I mean,
For
I
sure.
think people, one thing that I didn't know, like, for example, when I was in college, I just wasn't aware of it, but, you can go to a PhD program, and even if you don't finish your PhD, like, and oftentimes you can get that subsidized by the school. And then a lot of people don't finish their PhDs, but they do come away with a master's degree. And that,
Oh, yeah,
that,
This is
that's,
now,
Yeah.
even for med school, you do MD, PhD, and you don't pay for med school.
some people pay for med school. I don't know. I mean,
No, if you do, so if you are,
if you do an MD, PhD.
yeah, if you are accepted as an MD, PhD program for
Yeah.
medical school, for example,
Yeah.
you don't pay for med school because you are an MD, PhD. So you do your MD for free, but it's longer because you do the PhD with it. So
Yeah.
it's 2 or 3
And
years.
it's hard
more.
as a college student to, or even as a high school student to sort of like start taking the steps to prepare yourself for those kind of things. But yeah, like looking for things where you can get the learning without the expense, unless you're truly certain you want to go down a path is something that people
But
should
in
look
law
out
school,
for.
there's no other way, though. You have to go into law school in order to be a lawyer. How can you be a lawyer without paying the
There
fine?
are,
I
and
mean,
probably Kim Kardashian is doing this, but also like a
She
lot of other.
abandoned it. She
No, but
gave up.
right, but no, and most people don't make it through. But there are programs in California, for example, where you can sit for the bar if you like do enough time, like working at a lot, like under the supervision of a lawyer, and you like do the study yourself. I don't know what the bar passage rate is for that and how many people who enter those programs actually become lawyers, but those programs do exist. So you can become a lawyer without going to law school. It's a long and difficult road, but people do it.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know the actual details either, but it's possible. But even going to law school, the bar passage rate is, at least as I remember, it was lower than you might expect. It takes even people who end up having great careers and are, find completely competent, good lawyers, might take more than one try to pass the bar because it's a very
Yeah.
particular type of exam and
How long
did
it take
type of
you?
stress.
How long did it take you to pass the bar? I'm curious.
Personal question.
No comment. But all you got to do is pass it once. But
Yep.
No, I know that I think California bar is the hardest. That's what I heard. One of the
Yes.
hardest.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think we have a lot of licensing requirements in general, whether or not it's to our benefit or detriment. And so, yeah, we just have more requirements sort of across the board for, all licensed professions.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, yeah, there's the California Law Office Study Program allows individuals to become attorneys without attending law school. And they have to do, a number of years of supervised study.
So this that needs to have a mentor or someone to kind of
Yeah.
supervise you, though.
Yeah, and there are some nonprofits, the name of it is escaping me right now, that help support people going through that. But the name of the organization I'm thinking of is escaping me right now, unfortunately. But yeah, it's really expensive, and you see a lot of people also just going into certain career paths who go to law school that will help them pay off their loans as soon as possible. And so it really kind of determines people's career choices, just because they're really racked with debt when they graduate.
Yeah.
Even if they have some financial assistance, it's just so expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, but I've definitely gained invaluable knowledge and mainly critical thinking skills from law school. As much as I've never read so many pages in my life as I did during, I think in the rest of my life, I haven't read as much during the 3 years of law school. But it is 4 o'clock, and I don't know if you have a hard out. We want to be respectful of your time. Before we end the stream, is there anything that you would like to promote, or I don't know, let the audience know about? Could be your firm, could be an event, whatever if there's anything you're working on that you're...
Oh, no, just read your employment agreement and your consumer agreements for arbitration clauses. You may be able to cross them out without anyone noticing. You should just have an understanding of what rights you're waiving to, for example, have your day in court or to bring a class action. And also, if you're looking for an employment lawyer, you can always go, or a lawyer of any kind, you can often, a first place to start is your local like bar association for your county. For example, I'm in Oakland, and the Alameda Bar Association, County Bar Association, helps connect people with attorneys. I'm a member of the California Employment Lawyers Association, so if you need an employment lawyer, there's a Find a Lawyer tab on our website, on the website of that organization. Because one of the issues that people face is access to justice, and so there are places where you can find lawyers in the subject matter where you need them, and when you reach out to those lawyers, use your own words, because I and many others like me don't like to be talking to your AI lawyer.
So I do want to mention on that, because before you were talking about using it as like a template for something, but then replacing it with your words. Just a word of warning: even if you replace the template with your own words, it will look like AI.
Yeah, use your own words.
All right, well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Rachel, for your time. This was a really good conversation, and yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. You can head out if you need to head out, but I'm gonna go ahead and plug all the real good stuff that we usually do. Chat, if you're here, we'd really appreciate if you could follow the channel, if you could follow twitch.tv/realgoodai. If you could check out our website, we have a newsletter you can sign up for. We have volunteer groups that you can sign up for. We have there's a donation button. There's a donation on the stream right now, if you didn't notice. We have a merch store. We have information about the science that's going on at Real Good AI. If you're interested in the research, that page will be updated soon, but there is some stuff there that you can look at now. And there's a lot of stuff. It's a whole website. We have a whole website, chat. Yeah, I think that's about it. Oops. Go ahead and turn that camera off on my stream. We're going to go ahead and raid the Real Good Regiment at the end of the stream here. If you don't know what the Real Good Regiment is, they are a group of, well, they're volunteers who help out Real Good AI, but also they are people who just like to stream and are streaming.
They were inspired by our interview series and are actually doing a version of their own, and today is their first guest, so I do want to plug that. They're going to be talking to someone fun.
And I'm trying to remember, it's not Keith today. I'm trying to remember whose channel it is that I'm supposed to raid today. It is Cadet Liberty. They're live on Cadet Liberty. They should be live already. Yep, they are. So we're going to go ahead and then start that raid, but make sure you follow Real Good AI. If you have questions, they're probably answered somewhere on our social medias, because we do have social media, and Mandy makes a lot of videos. There are lots of clips from the streams like this one there's tons of stuff, but that's going to be it for today, chat. We will see you next Thursday with, I believe, another guest next Thursday, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes, we do. We have another guest.
I cannot. Oh man, I have too many pages open. You ever have like 1,000 tabs open, chat, and just completely lose track of what you're supposed to be looking at? Anyway, we have a guest next Thursday, and they will be an interesting person to
Isn't
talk
it
to.
the one on childhood education?
It is. It is.
Possibly. Okay. So, if you have questions about childhood education or AI and how it intersects with that, it'll be a great conversation. But we're going to launch the raid. Go have fun watching some Helldivers, and we'll see you on the next stream, chat. Bye.
I guess I could stop